Their minds were also incredibly adaptable. In a world with no rulebook, they had to be. They could identify hundreds of edible plants, track dozens of different animals by their footprints, and predict the weather by the clouds and the wind. This wasn't just intelligence, it was an intelligence forged in the fires of necessity. They lived their entire lives in an immersive real-time feedback loop with their environment. Mistakes were not just corrected, they were learned from, and the knowledge was passed down through generations. Their thinking was concrete and practical, yet also abstract and creative. They could conceive of a tool they needed and then meticulously craft it. They could plan a complex hunt that required days of preparation and coordination. They could create art that still moves us thousands of years later. They could tell stories that taught valuable lessons and bonded the tribe together. They had a deep sense of self and their place in the universe, an understanding that was both humbling and empowering. They were not cavemen in the cartoonish sense. They were us, just stripped of all the comforts and conveniences of modern life. They had the same brains, the same capacity for love, joy, and sorrow. They were the ultimate survivalists, yes, but they were also the ultimate artists, storytellers, and thinkers. They were the first to look up at the night sky and wonder why, and the first to look at a loved one and see not just a partner in survival, but a soulmate. They laid the groundwork for everything that came after, and their legacy is in our bones, our instincts, and our capacity to wonder. For hundreds of thousands of years, the nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle was the only way of human existence. It was a system perfectly adapted to the environment, a delicate dance between humans and nature. But around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, a profound shift began to occur, a revolution so significant that it would forever alter the course of human history. This was the advent of agriculture, the domestication of plants and animals, while seemingly a positive step towards stability and abundance. This transition marked the beginning of the end for the prehistoric way of life as our ancestors knew it, and it wasn't necessarily a smooth or universally embraced change. The exact reasons for this agricultural revolution are still debated by archaeologists. Climate change played a significant role, with the end of the last ice age leading to warmer temperatures and more predictable rainfall in some regions. This created environments more conducive to the growth of wild cereals and the flourishing of certain animal species. Population growth may have also put pressure on existing food resources, forcing humans to find more reliable and concentrated sources of sustenance. Whatever the precise catalysts, the shift from foraging to farming was a slow, gradual process, likely occurring independently in different parts of the world. Here in the lands that would one day become regions like Deragazi Khan, early communities would have begun to experiment with cultivating wild grains and perhaps domesticating animals like goats or sheep. The implications of this change were far-reaching. For the first time, humans began to settle in one place. Nomadic life, with its constant movement and relatively egalitarian social structures, started to give way to settled communities. Villages grew, and with them came new forms of social organization, specialization of labor, and eventually, social hierarchies. The need to tend to crops and manage livestock created a different kind of daily rhythm, one tied to the seasons and the demands of cultivation. The close proximity to domesticated animals also brought new challenges, including the transmission of diseases that had never before plagued human populations. This new era, while promising greater food security, also brought with it new vulnerabilities. Which shift to agriculture also fundamentally altered the human diet. While hunter-gatherers enjoyed a diverse range of foods, farming often led to a reliance on a few staple crops, such as wheat, barley, or rice. This narrowing of the dietary spectrum could lead to nutritional deficiencies that were less common in the varied diets of their nomadic ancestors. Archaeological evidence from early agricultural sites often reveals shorter average heights and signs of nutritional stress compared to pre-agricultural populations. The abundance of food provided by agriculture also led to increased population densities, which, in turn, could strain resources and lead to conflict over land and water. The development of agriculture also necessitated new technologies and innovations. Tools for tilling the soil, harvesting crops, and storing surplus food became essential. Pottery emerged for storage and cooking, and more permanent dwellings were constructed. This period saw the beginnings of architecture and engineering, driven by the needs of a settled lifestyle. The concept of land ownership also began to take root, as people became tied to the land they cultivated. This could lead to both cooperation and conflict between neighboring communities. The psychological impact of this transition was also significant. The close connection to the immediate natural world that characterized hunter-gatherer life began to erode as humans increasingly manipulated their environment. The rhythms of life became less tied to the migrations of animals and the availability of wild plants, and more tied to the cyclical demands of planting, tending, and harvesting crops. This shift likely brought a different kind of anxiety, the fear of crop failure, of drought, or of pests destroying their livelihoods. The uncertainties of the hunt were replaced by the uncertainties of the harvest, despite the challenges. The agricultural revolution ultimately proved to be a point of no return. The ability to produce a surplus of food led to population growth and the development of more complex societies. This surplus also freed up some individuals from the direct production of food, allowing for the development of specialized skills and professions: craftsmen, traders, priests, and eventually, warriors and rulers. The foundations of civilization, as we know it, were being laid. The small, egalitarian bands of hunter-gatherers gradually transformed into larger, more hierarchical societies with complex political and social structures. The knowledge and skills of the prehistoric world, honed over millennia of direct interaction with nature, began to fade. The intimate understanding of animal behavior, the vast knowledge of edible and medicinal plants, and the art of tracking and surviving in the wilderness, they became less crucial for daily life. This isn't to say that this knowledge vanished entirely, but its central role in human existence diminished. Yet even in our modern world, echoes of our prehistoric past remain. Our bodies are still adapted to the diets and activity levels of our ancestors. Our brains still carry the instincts and fears that kept them alive. The story of prehistoric humans is not just a tale of a long-lost past. It's a fundamental part of our story. Understanding how they lived, how they thought, and how their way of life ultimately gave way to our own provides crucial insights into what it means to be human. It reminds us of our deep connection to the natural world and the incredible adaptability that has allowed our species to survive and thrive. The end of the prehistoric era was the beginning of everything that followed: the rise of civilizations, the development of technology, and the complex world we inhabit today. And within us, in our very DNA, lies the enduring legacy of those who lived and struggled in the Stone Age. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the lives of prehistoric humans. It's humbling to consider the challenges they faced and the ingenuity they displayed in the face of a world so different from our own. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What surprised you most about how prehistoric humans actually lived? What aspects of their daily struggle or their social bonds resonated with you? And if you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories of our past. Your support helps us continue to uncover and share these incredible insights. What other ancient mysteries or forgotten eras are you curious about? Let me know in the comments below. You wake up, not to an alarm but to the silence of a world where every single day is a gamble. Your bed is a pile of dry leaves and furs, and your body is sore from a lifetime of physical labor. The air is cold, and your stomach is a hollow pit of hunger. This is the life of a prehistoric human, and the first thing on your mind is simple: food. Forget the romanticized images of epic hunts. Your day-to-day reality is a grueling, relentless search for calories. You're not just looking for a large animal. You're looking for anything edible: a handful of berries, a grub, the discarded carcass of a small animal. Survival isn't about heroism. It's about not starving to death. Every decision you make is filtered through this lens of basic needs. That spear you're holding, it's not just a weapon. It's the difference between eating and going to sleep hungry. And it's not just food that's a problem. Every rustle in the grass could be a venomous snake, a saber-toothed cat, or a rival group of humans. Your senses are your greatest tools, constantly scanning for both opportunity and danger. Your ears are tuned to the slightest snap of a twig, your nose to the faintest scent of water or a distant fire. This hyper-awareness is a state of being, not a choice. You don't have the luxury of a moment's distraction. Your life literally depends on it. The concept of a workday doesn't exist. There is no separation between home life and work. Life is a continuous, integrated struggle. Men and women work side by side, their roles often overlapping based on necessity. The old myth of men being the sole hunters while women stayed in the cave is exactly that, a myth. While men might have gone on longer, more dangerous hunts for large game, women were also formidable hunters, tracking smaller prey, setting traps, and leading the crucial gathering of plants, roots, and insects. It was a partnership of equals, where the group survival depended on every single person pulling their weight. Their daily grind was a masterclass in efficiency and adaptability. Built on a foundation of shared purpose, the rhythm of life is dictated by the environment. If a herd of mammoths migrates through, the entire group shifts its focus to a large-scale hunt. If the rains fail, the tribe moves, following ancient paths etched in their collective memory. There's no rest, no vacation, no taking it easy. Sickness is a constant threat, and a broken bone could be a death sentence. There's no modern medicine, no sterile environment to recover in. You rely on the rudimentary knowledge of plants for healing and the warmth of your group for comfort. Even a simple infection could be the end. This is a world where physical strength and resilience are not just valued traits, they are the only traits that matter. Your tools are extensions of your will to live. A sharp piece of flint isn't just a rock, it's a knife for skinning hides, a scraper for preparing food, a tool for making more tools. Every object is multifunctional, a testament to the resourcefulness born from scarcity. You learn to make fire not as a novelty but as an absolute necessity. Fire provides warmth, cooks food, and keeps predators at bay. It's the hearth of your small, nomadic family, the central point around which stories are told and plans are made. Fire is your most powerful ally against the unforgiving elements. Without it, you are simply prey. The hunt itself is a communal affair. It is not a solo quest for glory. A large animal like a bison or a deer requires coordination, strategy, and teamwork. There is a deep, unspoken bond that forms between hunters, a silent language of gestures and knowing glances. Failure means everyone goes hungry. Success means a feast, a rare and joyous occasion where the whole group shares in the spoils. There is no concept of individual ownership over the kill. The meat belongs to the tribe. This collective mindset is the bedrock of their society, a fundamental truth that holds them together in the face of overwhelming odds. The individual might be strong, but the group is invincible. And what about the predators? We often think of early humans as being at the top of the food chain, but that's far from the truth. They were prey as much as they were predators. Giant short-faced bears, massive dire wolves, and the terrifying saber-toothed cat were all very real, very present threats. You didn't just worry about these animals while hunting. You worried about them while sleeping. The small flickering glow of the fire was a constant source of comfort. A small circle of light against a sea of darkness filled with hungry eyes. A night watch was not a chore but a sacred duty, a responsibility passed from one person to the next to ensure the safety of the tribe. Every sound in the night was scrutinized. Was it just the wind, or something else? Your mind, finely tuned by generations of survival, could differentiate between the two. The terror wasn't from a jump scare. It was a low, constant hum of anxiety that never truly went away. It was a fundamental part of the prehistoric experience. You learned to read the signs, the sudden silence of the birds, the frantic stampede of a distant herd, all clues that something was wrong. This wasn't paranoia. It was a deeply ingrained survival instinct. But life wasn't all fear and hunger. There were moments of genuine joy, the relief of a successful hunt, the warmth of the fire on a cold night, the simple act of sharing a meal with your kin. The world was a canvas of raw, untamed beauty. The stars were brighter, the silence deeper. Every sunset, every sunrise, every thunderstorm was a profound, awe-inspiring event. Your connection to the natural world was not abstract, it was everything. This deep, visceral understanding of your place in the ecosystem as both a predator and prey, as both a participant and a witness, was the essence of being human in the Stone Age. It was a life of profound hardship, but also one of profound meaning. We often picture prehistoric humans as grunting, solitary brutes, communicating through simple gestures and driven only by instinct. This couldn't be further from the truth. The very thing that allowed them to survive was their complex social structure. A solitary human was a dead human. You lived and died by your group, a small, intimate tribe of perhaps 20 to 50 individuals. Everyone was family, not just by blood, but by shared fate. There was a leader, often the wisest or most skilled, but decisions were likely communal. There was no king or queen, but a network of trusted individuals who held the group together. This wasn't a society of individuals, but a single, living organism. Cooperation was the highest virtue. The act of sharing food, for example, wasn't just an act of generosity. It was a form of social insurance. If one hunter had a bad day, they knew their family would still eat because another hunter was successful. This system ensured that everyone had a fighting chance. This is the birth of empathy, of a deep-seated understanding that your well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the person next to you. It's a level of interconnectedness we can barely grasp in our modern, individualistic world. And what about communication? While they didn't have a written language, their spoken language was likely far more advanced than we give it credit for. It was the glue that held their social fabric together. They had names for each other, for animals, for plants, and for the landmarks around them. They used language to teach their children how to make tools, to recount the stories of a successful hunt, and to warn of danger. The complexity of their survival strategies and their social bonds required a rich, nuanced system of communication. They were not primitive in mind, they were simply different. Beyond the daily grind, there was a rich inner world. This is where the savage mind comes alive, not as something primitive, but as something deeply spiritual and artistic. They weren't just surviving, they were thinking. They looked up at the stars and saw patterns. They looked at the animals. They hunted and saw not just food, but spirits. The earliest cave paintings weren't just art. They were a form of storytelling, a way of connecting with the spiritual world, and a way of teaching. A painting of a successful hunt wasn't just a record of an event. It was a ritual to ensure future success. We see evidence of complex emotional lives in their burial rituals. The discovery of ancient graves where individuals were buried with flowers, tools, or ochre pigments tells us something profound. They weren't just discarding a body. They were mourning a person. They believed in something beyond this life, a spiritual realm or an afterlife. These weren't empty gestures. They were acts of love and respect for the dead. It shows that even in the face of brutal, everyday survival, they had the capacity for deep grief and a sense of hope for something more. They had a sense of self and of community that transcended the physical world. Their world was infused with meaning. Every tree, every rock, Every river held significance. Their understanding of the world was holistic and integrated. There was no separation between science and religion, between the physical and the spiritual. A shaman or a medicine person wasn't just a healer. They were a storyteller, a spiritual guide, and a repository of the tribe's collective knowledge. They understood the rhythms of the seasons and the behavior of animals in a way that we have lost. They were both scientists and poets, observers of the natural world who saw its deeper meaning.